Thanks everyone for dialing in. We're going to go ahead and get started with today's programming. My name is Adam Sewell. I lead the sales team here at Density, and really appreciate everyone taking time out of their day. Everyone in my professional, personal life, our customers, folks that I'm interfacing with, everyone's been impacted in different ways by the coronavirus and the shutdowns that are related to it. So we wanted to just start talking about kind of what we've heard through our customers, specifically around essential retail services providers and other companies that are operating with staff and locations throughout this crisis. So we'll share some best practices and kind of things that we're hearing. Appreciate everyone being patient with my castaway look here. I'm in desperate need of a haircut, so my wife is threatening that she's going to take the shears to me in the next couple of days. So next time you see me, I might be a little bit more clean cut. So we'll go over kind of what we're hearing through our customers and some of the folks we're helping in the field. We'll talk about occupancy monitoring, specifically as Density thinks about it, but more broadly, we can talk about some programs and protocols that our customers are putting in place to deal with occupancy limits and workplace health and safety. Then we'll do a quick product demo, just give you a quick look at kind of what the Density platform looks like. And then at the end, we'll do Q&A. So if you do have questions, please feel free to enter them there. There's a little Q&A box at the bottom of the Zoom. Just enter them there and we'll get to them at the end. But today you've just got me. Usually we have a couple folks on here, but today you're stuck with me. So here we go. All right. So, COVID, coronavirus, the novel coronavirus has changed a lot of the way that we all think and kind of go about our everyday business. Density in particular. So in our case, we are fortunate that we're able to have our team work from home. So that's something we've had in place since early March. We have another set of programs around bringing workforces back into the workplace safely. And if you haven't checked out some of those webinars or other content, we really recommend that you do. Today, we're talking about what do you do if you have operations that have to stay open. So what we've heard is, obviously customers and employees have concerns around their own personal safety, about making sure that they feel that they're protected against any potential transmission of the virus. They also have a convenience element. Going to the grocery store, going out to a hardware store, doing the things that we once all took for granted. In some cases, it's taken a lot longer. And stores and staff are really stretched thin. We're talking with grocery clients of ours who have corporate employees working in stores to help out. So it's obviously a very trying time. Amid it all, you kind of have to still keep in mind the customer's experience and what they're going through. And then in terms of your operations, we're seeing a lot of new things, new challenges that stores and companies and other providers are having to kind of deal with. So, Texas just reopened as just one example. Businesses are permitted to open, provided that they're at 25% capacity. Now, 3 months ago, no one was ever thinking, how many people should I have in my space? And all of a sudden, at the state level, companies are being asked to make sure that they don't go over stated number of people in their spaces. So dealing with that occupancy compliance is something that's coming to the fore. Cleanliness and sanitization. Obviously, a lot of these operators already have cleaning and sanitization protocols in place. Those are being revisited. How do you clean more effectively? How do you demonstrate to your customers and staff that you're being more effective with those programs? And how do you do so in an intelligent way? So that's another thing that customers are kind of going through these days. Employee health, dealing with employees that in unfortunate cases do fall sick. How do you continue to staff? How do you continue to operate? And then how do you make sure that you're controlling costs amid all of this? So how do you do this in an effective way so you're not ruining your balance sheet by overstaffing or paying for things that ultimately are too expensive. So specifically on how some retailers are dealing with this, the occupancy and counting. I mentioned the 25% capacity limit in Texas. That seems to be a fairly standard, rough ballpark. We've heard anywhere between 20 and 25%. Walmart a few weeks ago announced that they're limiting occupancy to 1,000 square feet per five people. So it roughly equates to 200 square feet per person. So per square foot limits is another thing that operators are putting in place. What we've heard through our many conversations is that most of the retailers are using manual counting, so they have staff allocated, posted at the points of entry. If there are multiple points of entry, we've seen walkie-talkies being deployed. So if you've gone to a Lowe's or a Home Depot recently, you'll see staff outside with walkie-talkies, radioing between the two doors, saying, "Hey, 4 people in, 3 people out." No, 2 people came back in, and so there's some challenges around keeping an accurate count there. Not to mention that the staff allocation is required for that, when those staff members might be able to be allocated to another set of tasks. And then in grocery, at least, we have seen some customers who are capping the number of carts as kind of a rough estimate of how many people are permitted in. If in general and across your store you have maybe 200 or 300 carts, if you bring that down to 40 or 50, that might be a reasonable way to make sure that you're not letting too many people in. Of course, there's not one-to-one in terms of cart allocation. So there's something to be taken into consideration there. But that's kind of what we heard. In terms of how density assists, and sorry, I've got someone at the door here, so I'll just keep plugging along here. These are the nuances of working from home. So in terms of how we're trying to help our customers and other folks is providing data in a system that can automate occupancy monitoring, so that you can save staff time and also potentially expose that data to your staff and employees, or your employees and your customers, so that they feel that there is a protocol in place. There's data to kind of measure its effectiveness. And I know that I'm not putting myself at risk by going into a store location or a break room or some other facility where I'm going to be exposed to a crowd of people. And then ultimately, in the long term and the near term, there are opportunities to save time for your customers. And we'll get into some of this in the demo, but what our data does is it gives you a real-time and highly accurate count of how many people are in any given space at any time. So we're talking with a convenience store operator who has many different locations, where customers are very used to going to a convenience store and just being able to walk in, get what they need, and walk out. That's no longer the case. And so customers are getting very frustrated with that experience. So we're talking about how could we expose that data, perhaps in a mobile application or web page, where a customer could check nearby locations by occupancy and go to the location that is safe to enter, has the fewest number of people. So those are the types of conversations that we're having on what you can do with some of this data. So in terms of your customer employees, it's primarily about reassuring them that they're safe, putting in new policies and programs to enforce those safety measures, and then communicating to them. What I can say is what we've seen across all of the customers we talk to is people can not get enough information or updates about this topic. Justifiably, people are concerned for their own safety. Even as the economy reopens, there's going to be that front of mind for everybody. So the more that you communicate with them in a credible way, the better. And then also on your spaces, so the way that we help is obviously complying with those occupancy limits, monitoring them in real time and creating some alerts, improving cleaning effectiveness. So, space generally, historically, has been cleaned on a schedule. Every space is cleaned similarly. Aside from, specific, very specific, localized messes and other accidents. But being able to clean space based on which spaces are being used most often is something that's coming to the fore for us. Improving staff and efficiency, which we'll get into, and then also reducing that wait time and improving the customer experience. So that's kind of some background information on what we're hearing. If you're on and listening, we'd love to hear from you. What are some of the things, some of the challenges you're facing? Would love if you could share that in the Q&A, and maybe some of the new policies that you're considering putting in place or have put in place to manage some of this stuff. So here we're going to transition and start talking specifically about the density technology. What you see at the right there is we make a highly accurate, fully anonymous, and real-time people counter. It goes above a doorway. I'll walk you through how that sensor works. But the sensor is kind of the least interesting part about what we do here at Density. What our customers really care about is, what is the data and how do I improve my operations with it? And that's a screenshot of what you're seeing at the right there. That's a screenshot of analytics, which I'll show you here towards the end of the webinar. And that's a tool where you're able to compare how your spaces are performing, create alerts, ensure that you're staying within safe occupancy levels. So the things that we like to talk about, it's accurate real-time data. From an IT or networking standpoint, it's a very secure and reliable device. IT teams are generally very impressed and excited to work with us. So if you're thinking about IT being a blocker, we'd love to talk to them and just make sure that they understand how the technology works. It's really scalable. So our software is built for managing many different spaces and many different locations. So you could start with a handful of your stores and then really scale out and get a sense of how many people are coming into your various locations. And then in terms of deployment, we work with a great network of installation deployment teams and companies and partners that can get you up and running very quickly. So this is what the sensor looks like deployed in an environment. It's above this entry point. And what the sensor is doing at a very high level is it's using a combination of infrared light and machine learning algorithms that sit on the device. And not without going too far into the weeds on the technical details, this is kind of what the sensor is doing. So on the left there, that is the raw data. What the sensor is doing is it's measuring depth. And on the right, the sensor is then processing that raw data to delete all non-human objects and activities from the scene. And this is why we're able to be more accurate and more real-time than any other solution on the market. Especially in store settings, you have people with bags and carts and, perhaps pets, depending if you've got, service animals coming through your doors, people walking in multiple different directions in high volumes. All of these other types of scenarios are proved very difficult for other sensors. This is where other sensors and other solutions will fall down, whereas Density is able to provide a very highly accurate and real-time count. So what this means in terms of the actual occupancy monitoring solution or system that we're working with customers on, there's kind of three components. There's display, which simply means displaying the data to not only your staff and employees, but also to your customers or other occupants of your space, and enabling them to make decisions about how they're going to go about their day. Alerts, so what happens if your space does get too crowded? Perhaps you want to notify people when spaces are quiet or otherwise safe to come visit. How do you alert? And we'll go over that with the product demo. And then compliance. How do you keep track of all of your different store locations? Many customers are thinking through, are there legal ramifications for this? There's obviously some state mandates and guidelines coming out. It's unclear whether that's going to happen at the municipal level. And so future-proofing against future government regulation or guidelines is something that's important. Being able to keep track of that and reference it if you ever get asked questions. So we'll show you what compliance looks like with our analytics tool. So real quickly, this is a quick look at what Density's data looks like in an environment. You could display, really rough guidelines in terms of, hey, it's crowded, wait right now, your estimated wait time is a couple minutes. Green, go, it's safe to go. Just giving people visual cues within spaces to make them feel reassured about their own safety. These displays can be, customized on which monitors you want to deploy, how the branding or how the data is that you want to expose. All of this stuff can be customized depending on your use case, and it's all powered by our open API. I'm actually going to show you a quick look at this during the product demo, so stay tuned. This is just another look, so we're working with a lot of folks in the food processing and manufacturing space, where they have critical staff, warehouses, things like that, that have been worked throughout this entire thing, and their employees have concerns over, walking into a crowded break room. Ideally, they'd have the information available to them to decide whether they wanted to go into that break room or not. So this is just another deployment example where you could, display, hey, this break room's not a good time to go on your break. Maybe you want to go outside, go for a walk, whatever those other options are. But this is a great way to help give people the information they need to make smart decisions about their own personal safety. In terms of alerts, and we'll show you this in the demo, there's a number of different options. Out of the box, it's very easy to configure SMS alerts, so you can notify key members of your staff. We're talking with a large mall operator who, they operating a mall as the owner is challenging. You've got the individual tenants and the individual store locations, parking lots, garages, all of these types of things. They're kind of rethinking how they need to adjust their operating posture. one thing they're considering doing is using density to track overall building occupancy, and then alert staff who would then go close the ring road temporarily while that location is kind of at or just under its occupancy limit. So it's very easy with a few clicks with density to be able to configure these alerts and notify folks that it's either safe or it's overcrowded. Another use case that we're seeing is that cleaning use case. So talking with another company that has, well over 100 washrooms or restrooms at a number of their facilities. And they want to be able to clean those based on how often they're used. It's a great use case in terms of, cleaning a bathroom after it's been visited 50 times is probably a more accurate approximation to how to clean that bathroom effectively than clean this bathroom every 4 hours. And so that's another use case that alerting becomes very valuable. You could alert your cleaning or custodial staff after rooms have been visited by a set number of times, and while that space is relatively quiet or not crowded. Because the last thing you want to do is send custodial staff to go clean a restroom when it's very, very busy or people are using those facilities. So washrooms and restrooms are coming up a lot, and we don't have all the answers, but we're kind of working through some of these scenarios with our customers to help them figure out what the right protocols are. And then finally, kind of compliance, and we'll show you this in a quick demo, but this is achieved with space analytics, which is part of Density software package that you get when you work with Density. And what this does is it allows you to compare any location in your space. So that could be, it could be a break room, it could be, it could be your entire store, it could be any other space. Compare those spaces and track them relative to these performance metrics. So occupancy and other things. Can you pause just 1 second? I think I might be having audio issues. I want to make sure that I address them before plowing on here. Okay, I think we're good. But if you're having a hard time hearing me, please feel free to raise your hand. Okay. So I'm gonna keep. I guess we're just gonna take a quick pause. Okay, I'm getting the green light from our producer. Thanks, Megan. Okay, so I'll show you analytics. It should be pretty intuitive and fun. And then in terms of some of the names we're working with, happy to share any of the customers that we've worked with in the past. But one of the things that we've seen is that this technology does deliver in terms of its accuracy and its ability to generate data that can be valuable. On the accuracy front, I'll talk about how we think about accuracy if y'all have questions. But we will never claim that we're 100% accurate. But in good install conditions, what we're seeing is sensors are anywhere from 96 to 100% accurate in terms of the number of people that it counts. And then the other thing to note is the software and firmware, or the software that runs the device, is continually being updated with new versions of the algorithms and new operating system updates and things like that. That's all included as part of the service. So the short version is your sensors will get smarter and more accurate over time. Okay, so with that, I'm going to hop into a demo here real quickly. And classic to Murphy's Law, Zoom is doing the thing where it's hiding my cursor. So give me 1 second to sort that out. All right, there we go. Thank you for bearing with us. Okay, so I've gone ahead and logged into a demo environment of Dashboard. Now, Dashboard is our web application, meaning you can log in on any modern internet browser. Let me do one last thing. Great, thank you. So what that means is you can have your staff securely log in on any browser. There's no additional software you need to download or maintain. It just simply works. So I've logged in here and I've clicked on Spaces. And again, a space, this is an office building demo environment, but a space could be, an individual store. It could be a store at this level, and then underneath the store, you could have a break room, your washrooms, perhaps a back office or office space, whatever those things are. If you're in a warehouse environment, similarly, you'd be able to set up your hierarchy here. We've got a great customer success team that can help you get enabled and trained on the data so that you can start to make use of it. But I've just gone ahead and gone in here into this Albuquerque headquarters, and you can see my other locations here. I've got Albuquerque, Dallas, New York, and I've gone ahead and clicked on this All-Star Cafe. Now, again, this is a demo environment. This is just visualizing what you would see. There's actually not that many people in this space right now because we've got some limits. But let's go ahead and just have a look at some of the data here. So you can see there's a legal capacity, and most spaces have a built-for fire code compliance capacity. What we've seen is historically people don't pay too much attention to that, aside from venue operators and other people who have large numbers of people. But it's coming to the fore. So people actually of all different industries are really concerned and interested in how many people are in their space. So we've got a legal capacity of 600. We're going to target 440 for this particular space. So this is the largest cafe, but we sure as heck don't want more than 440 people into this space. And so you can customize all of these targets. And then I'll just show you kind of some of the data here. This is live data. Keep in mind that 440 target capacity. You can see one of the reasons that density is able to do what it does is we're processing the data at the edge, which means the device itself is processing the data it's capturing. It's not capturing any personally identifiable information. It's totally anonymous. Processes that data and then sends data just +1 or -1 to our cloud service, and then it's rendered here or in any other application that you might be using via our API. And apologies if I'm getting into the details here. I have a tendency to do that, but what this is just a live view of the people streaming into this space, which is these blue dots here, and then these gray dots are exits. So what density is doing, this location has a number of different doorways, or if it did, it would be counting people coming in, that one doorway, it would be counting people out the other doorway, and vice versa. So the sensor's counting bidirectionally, and because the sensors work as a network, you're able to, in real time, get to this occupancy count. So right now, of all those entrances and exits, we're seeing 102 people, 101. And this data is made available in this software as well as others. So moving on here, you can kind of see just intraday peaks and lulls and peaks on where the traffic's coming from and how people are, looks like lunch is the biggest service here at this cafe. This is entrances, so this is just the number of people that were detected walking into the space in any one given day. This is that same data by hour. And so if you're trying to get a sense, pre-COVID, we were working with some retailers for them to understand overall traffic patterns and foot traffic for staffing. So predictive staffing, making sure you're not overstaffed or understaffed, opening cash wraps and registers based on the number of people streaming into your building. Now it's really around, hey, when do we have problem areas? When, if we're going to do a senior citizens, shopping hour, when would that be a good time to do that? There's a number of use cases there. And then this is kind of the real salient point here for spaces is occupancy. So this is that peak occupancy data streaming over the past several weeks. And what this is when the space was its busiest in this day, how many people were in the space. And so you can see we're kind of just right around that target capacity here. So that 440, you can see, this day we went over it, which was March 31st. We've exceeded it a few times, which either means that we could, if we thought this was an egregious problem, we could put in a new policy. We could, limit people coming into the space. But very easily what you're able to do is just create a very basic text notification that says, hey, you know what? I want to get notified when it hits 400. And you can create and configure these all essentially within the software. So you can notify, whatever staff is responsible for occupancy. Hey, you're approaching that limit. Please initiate kind of the protocol that we discussed to rate limit the number of people coming in. So that's one potential use case of that data. And again, just a few clicks, you're able to create that alert. So that's alerts. I'll talk about compliance, and I know that I did this in a different order, but we're talking about alerts. Then we'll talk about compliance, and then I'll show you display just really, really briefly. And then I know that we're almost at the half hour, so I want to be respectful of everyone's time. So this is analytics. I'll just click over here, and we'll just take a quick look at this. This is that ability for you to keep record of all of your data for the duration of your density service. So if you were ever asked by a health department, hey, I'd love to understand how you've been managing this, you could very easily create a report, share it with them, and kind of have that be your answer. But this is just an ability. So we're just looking at 4 floors here is just this one example and understanding in terms of, let's look at occupancy. In terms of occupancy, how many people are coming into this space. So again, here's that cafe or this another space that has capacity for 440. You can see at peak we're at 453. There's an opportunity to perhaps shift some of these people to a different space. And so depending on what your use cases are, if these are employees, for instance, you could say, hey, instead of going to the 4th floor, we're going to reallocate some people to the 2nd floor, or perhaps even the 1st floor where there's more room for people to work or to take breaks or whatever the use case may be. So I'll show you one more quick thing, the ability to, we talked about usage-based cleaning. This is a very easy way. This is essentially a collection of reports that you can configure and then get a sense of, how many square feet per person are we trending in our different spaces or our different locations? Are we hitting the targets that we're setting up for ourselves? How often, show me the 10 most used spaces, and I'm going to send this report to our cleaning staff. I'm going to send it to, daily cleaning, hit list. So these are the spaces that have been hit most often or used most often. And I'm going to send this to our cleaning staff every morning at 6 a.m. And you can just select their usernames here. Every morning at 6 a.m. they're going to get a report that has that top 10 list of priority hit list rooms or spaces to go clean. Okay, so then finally I'm going to show you display, and I just 1 second to get into another demo environment here. Okay, thanks everyone for your patience. Okay, so what I'm about to show you is something that our team, listened to our customers over the past 4 or 6 weeks, and very quickly developed something that could be a very easy to deploy display solution, where you'd be able to show data to your occupants and let them make decisions, help them feel reassured, and also communicate to your employees or your customers. So this is a beta feature. We just released it, but I'm just going to show it to you really quickly. So I'm going to go in here, and we have this break room. In this example, the capacity is 6. And so very, very easily we would be able to display this type of data to your employees or customers. And so what they would see is something that looks like this. Right now, it's not full at all. There's no way they should feel no reason. There's no reason for them to kind of think about what else they could do at that given moment, right? It's also, there's a convenience factor. Someone might want to take a break or go to the gym or do something else in the next 2 hours. They just want to know when it would be a good time to go do that. Now, the feature that we've developed for customers, we want to help in the immediate term. And deploying density, excuse me, is a fairly quick process. We can get you up in a few days if you wanted to deploy sensors and get up and running with actual density data. In some cases, we're working with retailers with like hundreds of locations, and they have staff posted at the entry, manually counting with a clicker and using walkie-talkies. So what we developed here is a version where you'd be able to enter data manually on your mobile phone. So instead of a clicker, you would have a density web page up on your phone, and you'd be able to manually add data to a density count. So the only difference is, rather than coming from the sensor, it would be coming from one of your staff members. So you could implement this, after this call, if this is something you'd be interested in. This data would then pipe into the density software product, and you'd be able to do alerting, analytics, and display all from that manual count. So all the staff member would do is +1 for an added person, and you can see as the occupancy goes up. This could also work across multiple doorways, right? So if you had 2 doorways, 2 staff members, they're both adding and subtracting in real time, and then that data would be piped into density. You'd be able to use all the capabilities that I just went over. So again, the use case here is exposing data around how much space a person is reasonably expects to be able to have if they're entering a store or entering a break room or other locations. All right, and I just have a few last slides. I promise not to kill you with slideware here, although I'm not sure I've done a good job at that so far. I just want to say, one thing that does come up is, folks obviously are concerned and interested to solve problems specifically around occupancy and all of the challenges that come with a crisis such as COVID. But they're also thinking more long term. And so many of our customers are thinking, hey, we need like a 2 or 3 year plan to manage this. A lot of public health experts are saying that this is going to be with us for a period of time, if not longer. But there's also a question is from a business perspective, in many cases, the ROI is clear on working with density, but there are other use cases. So in the long term, what are some of those applications? Just wanted to touch on 2 really quickly here. One is if you are opening a retail location that specifically has cash registers and queuing as part of the customer experience, specifically grocery. One thing that we're able to do very easily is to set an alert based on the rate of people coming into the space. And so if you have 20 people come in and you know that the average shopping time or the average dwell time is 18 minutes, we can alert your staff to open cash registers before those lines back up. So improving the customer experience while also dramatically reducing some of the costs associated with staff members taking extra time to deal with queue management. And then the last is as you gain more data around both customers or employees, depending on your use case, coming into spaces, being able to staff appropriately based on predicted demand is another future use case. So the system you install today has immediate benefits and impacts for the challenges around occupancy management, but the long term, using that data to inform other parts of your business is something we're working actively on with our customers. So here's a number of them. I'd be happy to share use cases from any one of these customers. But ultimately, at the end, I guess the real message from me and the team is, our team has been impacted by this. I think certainly a bit less so than others in the field who are operating essential services, obviously in healthcare, but also the retailers, the warehouse providers, Instacart delivers, all the people are keeping us functioning and running. Really just want to say thank you. And ultimately, if we can be helpful, we'd love to be helpful. And whether that's sharing information or potentially working together, we welcome the opportunity. So with that, I guess we do have a couple questions. Let's see. Question from David is the sensor all-inclusive of the technology, or do you need a host at each retail location? David, I think I understand your question. So the way the sensor works is there's, it's a PoE device. So if you have, cameras installed at your locations, which I imagine many of you do, it would be a very similar kind of approach to like a security camera. PoE, you plug it in. It does need network access, but it would get power and network connectivity from that one Cat5 or Cat6 line. And then it communicates in a secure manner. Data is fully encrypted, uses pretty minimal amounts of bandwidth, so it's very scalable. David, I hope that answered your question. David asked a similar question, can alert be set for each store so alerts that store manager versus call center number? Yeah, absolutely. So we can help you set up any number of kind of like communication, alerting based on role. And that's something I didn't touch on in the dashboard demo. You are able to create different permission sets. So you can imagine if you're a district manager, you'd be able to see all of your districts, all the stores in your district or region. If you're a store manager, you could only see your individual store data, and then you could even roll all the way up to corporate. So if corporate wants to see, hey, I want to know every single person, how many people are in every single one of my locations right now, that permission would kind of be at that admin or owner level. Really good question, David. Thanks for asking that. Question from Jerry, are the IR images recorded? The images are not recorded. So there's one piece of the sensor that's worth probably talking about. When a sensor first comes online, we go through a calibration process. And as part of that process, some samples of the data are processed in the cloud for annotation and training of that sensor. So After that process, those files are permanently deleted. And then once the sensor is calibrated under normal operating conditions, it's processing count and then deleting the file. So Jerry, I'm not sure if your question would be if you want it deleted or whether you would want it retained, but that's how it currently works. I'd be happy to follow up with you after to answer your questions if that doesn't address it. Joel asked, what is the cost per conference room? That's a great question. So we have list pricing on our website. The sensor is $895, and then there's a software license portion that's available in a 3 or 5 year term. So the density cost for 1 year would be around $1,200 at list. If we're working at a very large scale or with a large customer doing bigger deployments, volume discounts are certainly available. So Joel, I'd be happy to walk you through some options there. And I don't want to disclose anything too much, but we are later this year we're going to be announcing a follow-on sensor, which we stay tuned for details there, I guess. Don't mean to be coy. I'm just alluding to something here. So Isaac says, can you briefly explain the installation? Sure thing. Yeah. So it's it's a cable run. That's the recommended install. You can configure the device to run on Wi-Fi, but it still needs a power cable. So we can provide a PoE adapter. So usually the cable run is the most time-intensive process. What I would say is if you have a good facilities or IT team and you're doing a few sensors, they could likely do the project. We have really trusted partners who can do the whole thing turnkey, kind of run the cable. If you need switches or additional things, just kind of deliver that whole turnkey solution. They can fill gaps. So perhaps, your IT team wants to run the cable, but they don't want to hang the unit. They could do the hanging of the unit for you for sure. Or, so we have a bunch of different options there. But actually getting a unit on a wall takes about 10 minutes. It's usually the cable run that takes a bit of time. Alberto says, thanks, Adam. You mentioned the API. Is all the data extracted through the API to integrate this in other tools like ClickSense, Power BI, Tableau? Yeah, so exactly right. So there's a link in our footer on the homepage, which I know, or on our website, that points to our API documentation. If you have specific questions around systems that we integrate with or how you'd make use of the data, please feel free to reach out to me personally. It's just adam@density.io, and I can plug you in with folks on our side to kind of walk you through what that would look like. So yeah, Alberto, I hope that answers your question. We can also do, so there's an API, there's also webhooks. So if you wanted to subscribe to like streaming data, that's something that's easily done. Question from Stefan or Stephanie. What's the max width of control? Is it possible to control a large corridor? So that's a really good question. The sensor, to be accurate, the sensor has a max width of about 6.5 or 7 feet. So what we can do is it's called a multi-point install. So if you've got points of entry or people flowing through a wider space, we can have 2 sensors configured. We try to not do more than three sensors, but typically 2 will give you up to 14 feet. And just on that question, the way that we typically work with folks is, if you're interested in getting started, we have a pre-deployment team that can kind of look at a floor plan, look at your doorways, put together a rough scope of, hey, here's what this would look like. Here's the data you would get. Here's kind of the value. And then we would work with one of our partners, or if you have an install partner, to kind of go deploy that system. But yeah, that's a really great question. Jay asks, can we monitor customer temperature? We get that question a lot, and we don't, without going into too much detail. There are thermal cameras on the market. There's some laser things on the market. Our sensor does not do that. And what I would say is that there's been a lot of chatter around this for obvious reasons, and I think there are some manufacturers out there making kind of false claims around, hey, this is fever detection. My take on this is it's not fever detection. It's potentially a pre-screening tool, but if you have people coming into a space that have been in the sun or they just got back from a workout, then they're going to be triggered as having a fever when they actually do not. But it's certainly front of mind. Alex has a question about wireless connectivity. battery-powered sensors, et cetera. We do not, and the reason is battery-powered sensors. They're attractive because they tend to be low cost. In terms of getting up and running, it's very fast. But what many people find is that over the long term, you've got to change batteries. There's a lot of ongoing costs and headaches that go along with it. Not to mention, if you do really want real-time and accurate data and want to be able to count at scale, batteries-powered sensors just have their limitations. There's definitely use cases where it makes sense, but we don't have plans to do a wireless sensor at this stage. David has a question. Can the sensor create an alert if max capacity in areas hit? We want no more than 3 guests in a line. If we hit a 3 in a line, cashier hits a button to send an overhead alert. David, what I'd love to do is maybe we can follow up and talk about your specific use case after this. Be happy to drill in with you and understand a bit more about how you'd like to deploy. But generally, yes, we can kind of create alerts based on how many people are in a space. Okay, a couple more quick questions. And sorry, I am. All right, Jerry. If the unit is moved or relocated, does it need to be recalibrated? It doesn't need to be, but we really strongly recommend that it is. And we can walk you through why and how that works. And then, does it need to be installed over a door? Can it cover a communal kitchen? We are a threshold-based sensor currently, and so it needs to kind of go at the threshold. So people coming into that mini kitchen or that space, that's kind of how we would support that. But Austin, please email me after this, or we'll reach out and we can talk to you about future options. Okay, with that, we're a bit over time, so just want to say thank you all for your time today. I know there's a lot going on, and you all are likely dealing with lots of different new challenges. Again, ultimately, we just want to be helpful. So if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me. And if you'd like to get started, reach out to our team, and we'll be happy to chat with you and share what we know. All right, thanks all.